When people think about the origins of economic thought, most minds immediately turn to figures like Aristotle, Adam Smith, Karl Marx, and John Maynard Keynes. However, in the medieval world, there is a lesser-known truth that the West often prefers not to tell. Nearly 1,000 years ago, long before capitalism and central banks had even emerged, a Muslim thinker issued a warning that still echoes through every financial crisis we experience today. When money loses its moral compass, societies begin to rot from within. Looking at the world we live in today, it's fair to say he understood us remarkably well. Welcome to History of Finance, a world where money, power, and history intersect, and nothing is ever as simple as it seems. To truly understand Al-Ghazali, we must place one of the most influential thinkers of the Islamic Golden Age within a world that feels both familiar and strangely foreign. The calendar shows roughly the year 1100. Europe is fragmented, impoverished, and still struggling under the destructive legacy of the early Middle Ages. By contrast, the Islamic world is rising across a vast region stretching from Al-Andalus to Persia. Cities are wealthy, populations are dense, and cultural life is vibrant. Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo. These are not merely cities, but the financial and intellectual centers of their time. Trade routes are alive with caravans carrying silk, spices, textiles, and silver. Scholars debate philosophy, law, astronomy, and medicine. At a time when markets are expanding and the empire is growing wealthy, economic change is transforming the social order at an unprecedented speed. In the midst of this transformation, Al-Ghazali emerges. He is a man deeply grounded in philosophy, law, and theology, yet unafraid to criticize the existing order. What sets him apart is his ability to examine the workings of economic systems with the same clarity he brings to discussions of humanity's spiritual purpose. By his mid-30s, he held one of the most prestigious academic positions in the Islamic world. But what truly set him apart was not the rank he achieved. It was his refusal to accept the status quo. Al-Ghazali was observing a world in which economic growth was accelerating, while social balance was beginning to fracture, a society where money was placed at the center and meaning was steadily pushed to the margins, an economic order that appeared to be growing on the surface yet was weakening from within. The modern parallel to this contradiction is not difficult to see, and it is precisely at this point that Al-Ghazali raised the fundamental question no one else dared to ask. What happens when a civilization grows wealthy before it becomes wise? This question sits at the very center of Al-Ghazali's system of thought, and traces of it can be found throughout all of his writings. While searching for an answer to this question, Al-Ghazali turned his attention directly to money. And this is precisely the point that most surprises Western audiences. Because Al-Ghazali was not merely a religious scholar, he was one of the earliest minds to think about money through the lens of morality and systems. Aristotle defined money as a functional tool. Modern economists tried to explain it through numbers. Al-Ghazali, however, examined how money changes human beings, how it shapes behavior, how it distorts incentives, how it builds trust, or destroys it. And in the end, he asked, where does money lead a society? The answer to this question lies at the heart of his understanding of money. According to Al-Ghazali, money was not a status symbol, not a moral measure, and certainly not something to be worshipped. To him, it was not an end, only a means. According to Al-Ghazali, money was merely a tool that made exchange possible, not sacred, not untouchable. And to explain it, he used a striking metaphor. Money is a mirror. A mirror has no value of its own. Its value is measured by what it reflects. Money is the same. Its power does not lie in gold or silver. It lies in people's ability to trade, to build things, and to cooperate with one another through trust. This idea, which modern economists present today as a discovery, was articulated at a time when much of Europe still understood wealth primarily as land or plunder. And from this perspective emerged one of his sharpest warnings: money that is hoarded is dead money. Wealth locked away in chests, hidden inside rooms, buried beneath the ground. According to Al-Ghazali, this is not merely useless, it is something that rots society from the inside. Because money that does not circulate, does not feed workers, does not expand trade, does not sustain families. Money that does not circulate chokes the breath of the economy. And if an economy cannot breathe, collapse is only a matter of time. Al-Ghazali expressed this with a single sentence: stopping the circulation of a society's bloodstream. If this were said today, it would fit perfectly at the center of almost any modern critique. But Al-Ghazali was not merely talking about greed. His objection was not personal. It was systemic. It was about corruption. Because when the wealthy hoard money, a real scarcity emerges, not because resources have run out, but because circulation has stopped. When money does not move through the system, prices rise, trade stalls, people's purchasing power falls, and the cost is always paid by those at the bottom. According to Al-Ghazali, this is no coincidence. It is the natural outcome of the system. And at this point, he takes the argument one step further. He delivers his next major warning: speculation destroys trust. And when trust collapses, the economy collapses with it. We didn't just see this in theory. We lived it in real time. The 2008 global financial crisis. Banks packaged and sold mortgages that had no real value. Everyone thought they were winning. Then credit stopped. Liquidity froze. The global economy locked up. And no one truly won, especially people like you and me, who were pushed into even harsher conditions. There was one thing Al-Ghazali never showed tolerance for: those who deliberately manipulate prices, those who create artificial scarcity, those who turn crises into opportunities and profit from pain. To him, these behaviors were not signs of intelligence. They were symptoms of moral decay. Whoever profits from the suffering of others, he warned, profits from corruption. And corruption, in Al-Ghazali's view, was not an individual flaw. It was a disease. Once it spreads, it first infects markets, then institutions, and eventually the entire society. If this sounds like modern financial bubbles, opportunistic debt systems, or crisis profiteering to you, yes, it's the same picture. The only difference is that it was written 900 years ago. Al-Ghazali was not opposed to trade. On the contrary, he believed in it. He argued that markets were natural and necessary. He believed that wealth, in the right hands, could be meaningful, even noble. His real target was not profit, but dishonest trade. What modern economists today call transaction costs, information asymmetry, and moral hazard. Al-Ghazali explained 1,000 years ago without using a single formula. Because he was not looking for the problem in numbers, but in human nature itself. Al-Ghazali was not preaching. He was describing reality. He understood that money is not a mechanical object. Money is a belief system. If trust exists, the system works. If trust disappears, even the strongest economy collapses. 1,000 years have passed. Technology changed, scale expanded, but human nature stayed the same. And perhaps that is why Al-Ghazali's warning is still valid today. When money becomes detached from morality, the system eventually collapses. And it is precisely at this point that the story leaves the Middle Ages and steps directly into today's banking system. Because the behaviors Al-Ghazali warned against never disappeared, they were simply institutionalized. Today, prices are no longer manipulated by individual merchants, but by algorithms. Artificial scarcity is no longer created by caravans, but by balance sheet games and tightened credit flows. And those who profit from crises no longer sit on street corners, but on the top floors of glass towers.